International Trading Journal Outlook course. I am the CEO and founder of AdMand Inc. We are a trading company, an international trading company. I've been doing trading for the past 25 years, and I just wanted to share some of what I know in this industry so we can together try to make a difference and educate the young generation on what is trading and how do we do it right and how do we improve ourselves so we can always be ahead of the curve and learn more. So this is just a start to open your appetite to find out more. So the first slide, this whole brief course is about contracts, different kinds of contracts, the trading basics, the terms in use, and where to start. Well, types of contracts. There are different types of contracts in international trading, in the international trading environment. And the first, of course, and mostly known is the buy and sell contract, where you buy a product and you sell a product, and that is the element of the contract. Also, a service provider falls under that. So a selling of a product or a selling of a service. Second type of contract is a joint venture contract, whereby two companies decide to become one to do a job, to produce a product, service, and to sell it to other people. A broker or facilitator contract is a contract by itself where third parties sign with either the buyer or the seller to outsource the other end of the contract. So if the brokers sign a contract with the buyer, then they would be exclusively finding him sellers for whatever product he's looking to attain. A consulting contract is a contract where you are being paid to find a solution to a problem. And that problem could be finding a service, which is a combination of services, or a product, which is a combination of things happening together, whereby you'd be a consultant. So you'd be paid to find something, to find a product, to find a service, a combination of thereof, or to do a certain job that you are asked to do in the international arena. So you could be consulted to do freight, shipping. You could be consulted to do inspection, inspect the products, so on and so forth. You could be consulted to buy the whole thing and make sure that it arrives from point A to point Z without interruptions. Elements or terms of a buy-sell contract. A buy-sell or service provider's contract has a bunch of information in it. That information defines the contract. And the first and the most important is the provider's information and obligations. The product service description, the time element on the contract signing, execution dates, allowable extensions, the price of the product or the service, the acceptable modes in terms of payment, acceptable modes in terms of shipping and delivery, non-circumvention, non-disclosure agreements, if any, commission schedules, if any, and penalties for non-performance. Elements or terms of a joint venture contract. The elements of a joint venture contract are the major elements are the joint venture parties' information and obligations. As I mentioned briefly, The parties of a joint venture contract are basically two joint venture companies that would merge and would be incorporated as a third joint venture company that would be undergoing the purpose of the joint venture. There's a time element and duration of a joint venture, and there is an NCND. There could be a commission schedule, and there must be penalties for non-performance. Broker or facilitator contract is a contract where, as I mentioned before, is a standalone contract where either party of a buy-sell contract or agreement is signing a separate contract with a broker to outsource a product if he's the buyer, or to outsource buyers if he's the seller. So in such a brokerage contract, there would be a buyer side brokers list, seller side brokers list, however it comes, and it could be a long-term working agreement that would extend to find different suppliers, or it could be a one-time agreement, or it could be a yearly renewable. There's so many forms. There could be an NCND to protect yet more third parties, and there is definitely a commission schedule, which is in this case incorporated in the brokerage contract, and the NCND as well is incorporated in the brokerage contract to protect and make sure that all the parties get paid what they deserve to be paid under the execution of the major contracts that this brokerage contract is come about for to do. There's also penalties for non-performers. We're not going to go in details. There's lots of details and lots of options and lots of cases. You can contact me on my YouTube channel, and I'd be very happy to answer those questions for you. A consulting contract is a contract where you are consulted or you're assigned to do something on behalf of another corporate entity. So you'd be assigned to purchase a product, or you'd be assigned to do a service like inspection on goods or before shipment, or you can be assigned to do the shipping, to outsource shipping agreements, to a contract where buyer and seller are nominal, but the seller cannot or is unwilling to partner with shipping partners by himself, and he wants the buyer to find shipping partners. Therefore, the buyer gets in consulting contract with you for freight services. It could be a one-shot deal. It could be a long-term working agreement, renewable or not. And the most important thing is there are terms, and the timely execution is very important. There are penalties for non-performance. Elements of a contract, like we've mentioned before, but this is more of in a graphics format. A product in a contract could be a finished goods, could be a work in progress, or could be a waste item. Finished goods, like you're buying for resale. You buy cars to resell them. Work in progress is, if you are a car manufacturer, you buy spark plugs from a company. So the spark plugs are by themselves finished products in the company that makes spark plugs. But for the company that makes cars, such as yours, the spark plugs would be a work in progress, which means without the spark plugs, your car will not work. But the spark plugs are not the end product, are not the finished goods. The car is. Scrap, as in scrap plastic, scrap metal, that go to the foundries to get melted, in the case of scrap metal, and be reformed into I-beams, H-beams for construction, so on and so forth. Payment terms. Every contract, as we said, have different payment terms. Amongst the payment terms, the well-known, there are so many, are cash against document CAD, letter of credit LC, and there are so many kinds of letters of credit: 100%, 80%, at site, irrevocable, revocable. This is not the purpose of this class. We can do letters of credit and payment terms in details in a later episode, where we would be talking about these in more details. Just send me your questions below it, and I'd be very happy to specifically answer your question and give you more details about what you're looking to know. An escrow account, whereby a legal entity would be holding money on the behalf of the buyer to pay the seller, to make when the just making sure the elements of the contract have been executed and the product is received in good order, so the money would be dispersed. A hybrid could be a bunch of a blend of two or more. Again, we're not going to be talking into more details. There are so many details, and there are so many other kind of modes of payment, like the telex transfer, which is not here, but it's in another page. Delivery, shipping. Ex-Works factory. Some sellers sell you Ex-Works factory. So this is my factory. You come pick it up from here. That's called Ex-Works. FOB port. FOB is a term that could be used for FOB factory, free on board, or FOB port, free on board port, which means either they're delivered in the factory, but they have to specify FOB factory, or they deliver at the port when they say FOB port. So in principle, FOB is port. Then CNF is cost and freight. CIF is cost, insurance, and freight, which means that includes shipping to your destination. But the first is cost and freight, no insurance. The second has insurance. And the last, and there are so many again, but these are the major ones, door to door, where me as a buyer, I'm not interested in all the steps of buying and shipping and clearing and delivering and trucking, and I want it delivered to my door. I'm ready to pay more money to just not to have to go through the hassle. And it's more like a CIF plus clearance, customs clearance, plus trucking, plus loading and unloading of the products at the warehouse of destination. Therefore, the term door to door. Now, for in the part of execution of the contract, there's a time element. So there's date of signing, time to execute with extensions, if any, and if it's a short-term or long-term contract, if it's renewable or it's not. In the execution phase, there's causes of violation when a violation in a contract happens, and it always specifies that. It always cuts it in half and says, well, there is a violation that's caused by default of either party, or either party decided not to do their part of the contract, or to miss one part of the contract, or make an error in concluding a part of the contract, and that is usually this is this is penalized, because it's done by either one of the two parties of the contract. And there's the other one, which is the force majeure, or the natural causes, force of nature, act of God, where something happened beyond the control of either parties and ends up in a violation in a contract, or dismissal of a contract, or breach of a contract. So there are obviously remunerations or penalties involved when there is default. However, there would not be an assignable penalty for a force majeure or an act of nature, an act of God violation in contract. Now, going to the international trading basics, you have to understand three major things. We're going to touch upon this later in another page, but the first would be adhering to international trading laws. I know the United States is not part of the ICC or the International Chamber of Commerce. However, either party of a trade agreement could be in a place outside the United States, so either the buyer or the seller, and depending on the contract itself, the execution of the contract, especially the litigation part in case of breach of contract, could be at either the United States or somewhere else where the buyer or seller decide to put it on the contract. So adhering to the laws, if they are local, in the case of the jurisdiction for litigation is the United States, your hometown, where the company is established, or if it's anywhere else, then you have to adhere with International Chamber of Commerce, international law. The second element is to protect your base, which means you have to get in contract. If you're a broker, an NCND, and a commission agreement, depending where you stand, you have to protect your base, and it can only be done by using a contract. Don't trust hearsay, word of mouth. That does not work in international trade. You have to be a team player, though. Do not hide. Do not use the black to hide information from buyer and seller. You'd be perceived as an untrustable entity if you're a broker. Be always transparent. Protect yourself in contracts, and be always transparent in disclosing information so you can earn the trust and help as a team player in the conclusion of the contract to the benefits of all parties involved. As we've mentioned, adhering to local and international trading laws. In the case of international jurisdiction, you have to understand there's an International Chamber of Commerce. Look it up online and you will have more information about this. You can read more. There are courses that will teach you international trade. There's more specific information as to the products that you're selling and what things you do not need to do. Because the things that you need to do could be the simple ones. Now, the basics of international trading. As I mentioned, this is the second mention of the same subject, and the reason why I'm doing this is to imprint in your memory the importance of three things. One, identify, which means you need to identify the need for a product or a service you either own to sell, can broker, or bring to the table. Protect. You need to sign a buy-sell, joint venture, broker, NCND, or consultant contracts to protect all parties of the contract, the major contract. And you connect all parties together, as I said. Do not hide information. Just be transparent so you can earn the trust of all the parties of the contract to make sure that the contract gets executed, and at the end of the day, you make the money that you're earned, and your work will not be free. You need to get paid for what you do. Now, going to an important term, the important part of this course, the lingo, or the terms in use in international trade. Contract, there are contract lingo, there are payment lingo, there's shipping lingo, and there are advertising lingo. It's like a skeleton of the contract. The parties, the subject, the terms, duration, the signing. Of course, there is payment under a contract, but it's a standalone item, and I put it that way So you can understand that there's CAD, cash against documents, TT, telex transfer, letter of credit, escrow, net 30, net 60, net 90. That could be 100% to be paid in 30 days when you have credit terms with a supplier that he's ready to extend to you 30 days for you to pay for the product that he delivers to you, or 60 days, or 90 days. He could be extending the 30 days at 100%, 80%, or any percentage. So again, that applies for 60 and 90 days. So he could be waiting on your 100% of the money, or 30% of, or 80% of the money in that term that he specifies as acceptable. For shipping, again, the terms, the lingo is X works, FOB free on board, CNF cash and freight, cost and freight, CIF cost, insurance and freight, D2D or D2D is door to door. CAD weight, that's different than cash against documents in the payment terms. That's the CAD weight is the weight of the truck that is hauling your container. It brings it's by law the shipping company should have that truck carrying your sea freight container, for example, weigh at a shipping weighing station, it's called the CAD station, empty before it loads your product. And at the end of the day, after it loads your product, it has to go to the same station and weighs full. Now the difference between the two weights is the weight of the cargo, the weight of the product in those containers. And there should be such sort of documents so you know as a buyer that the seller is not playing with the weights either by mistake or on purpose. Now there are other terms like an airway bill, which is when you're shipping by air, loading manifest when you're shipping by sea. Pro forma invoice is the technical invoice, is the international accepted invoice, where that should accompany the products as it travels as one of the shipping documents required for clearing the product at the port of destination. Certificate of origin is the same. It's part of the international documents needed to ship a product. Certificate of origin, delivery order, insurance certificate, SGS, which are inspection certificates, and many other reports and certificates, and other lingo. In terms of communication lingo, well, to be specific, we're not going to go in details. We're going to just give you an example, but the main thing to the takeaway is that when we're talking about communication, we have to be precise. When there is a buyer or a seller that's receiving 100 inquiries per day, he has no time to read love letters. So these inquiries should be very, very abbreviated and specific. So if somebody, if a seller has a steel to sell 20 metric tons, he's gonna go like that. He's gonna say, got a 20 MT per MTH, which means per month, HMS 1 and 2, that's the specific kind of scrap steel, ongoing, ONGNG, on a 2-year contract. Everything is abbreviated. Inspection on loading allowed, so on and so forth. This is how it goes. So you don't have to read a love letter. You can go through 100 inquiries per day in a short period of time and be able to service and answer those inquiries in a timely manner so as not to lose on the product and to be efficient in doing your job. Now, where to start? The whole purpose of this is to put you on a track to start, put you on track. And the four main things is you need to know your gig. So you need to educate yourself, and this is one of the lessons that you can start with. And You can find others on YouTube. You can find others and pay to get tutored in specific things, specific items of trade. You can educate yourself on. You have to educate yourself on the product or service that you intend to buy or sell. You have to educate yourself on how to find those products, and so on and so forth. We're going to discuss this in details in the next page. So the next thing is you have to incorporate to play, and then you have to advertise your game, and lastly you have to execute your first deal. So know your gig. Knowing your gig is knowing your product, knowing the terms that you're buying the product, knowing the market price, knowing the source where you can get those products, know your competitors, who is competing against you and what they're doing, and which markets they are involved in. Know your shippers, your facilitators, your brokers, your intermediaries, and learn how you can pull it through on the first go. That's very important. Now, incorporate to play. Why you need to incorporate? You need to incorporate to protect your personal assets. You have to separate yourself from the business because things could happen. Things could happen sometimes outside your control. You can find yourself at default. So in business, a rule of thumb is to create a corporation, which would be the first line of defense in case something happens. And the best one, in my opinion, is a limited liability company, for the obvious reason that the liability in that company is limited to the assets of the company and does not extend to your personal assets. Unless when you open a business account, you intermingle, you use that business account as a personal account. And in that case, you could be sued and personally, and you would lose the corporate cover. So again, incorporate a limited liability company is a good choice, but when you open your business bank account, do not intermingle the use of personal and business bank accounts. Keep them separate. Don't treat the business as your own personal bank account. If you want to transfer anything to your bank account, get paid. Make it like a payment voucher. You're being paid a salary, and you should be all right. But do not just withdraw money for your own use. Then keep a ledger. Make sure that you do your books, and have a CPA educate you on tax code, how to navigate safely and avoid getting yourself in trouble, and maintain a profitable outcome to your doing business. Advertise your game. Well, you need to buy a domain, preferably a .com domain. Build a website, introduce yourself, your company, and your services. Register your company in as many trading sites as you can find online. Start with a free account. It will serve you until you get your first deal. Alibaba, EC Plaza, Exporters, India, the HGate, so on and so forth. Create a page on social media sites like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Yelp, anywhere and everywhere you can. This is an ever-changing environment, and you need to be on your toes all the time. To do your first gig, to execute your first contract correctly, you have to do that. If you go through what I have taught you, you would be able to get through. If you go over this twice, you'd be able to execute your first contract without any problems. But that again depends on you going through more information on YouTube and getting educated about your product and your sources, so you know you're buying it at the right price, and you'd be able to sell it for a certain price, and you'd be able to make your money accordingly. So I wish you all the best of luck. If you need me in any specific endeavor, or you need to ask for any help, feel free to drop a line or two below, and I'd be very happy to answer you. You can see my information on the screen. You can use that as well to hit me up, and I'd be very happy to answer your questions. Now, if we have something more specific, we can either discuss a consulting agreement, if it's going to be long term, but if anything short term, I'd be very happy to be of any service to any of you without any return. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next one.